Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, February 12th, 2025, and today on the Roundup we're going to be answering three questions we've been hearing from international educators over the last 7 days. First up, we're going to be doing, as we do each week, we'll take our three questions from the news stories that we feature in our newsletter that comes out on Monday morning. And if you aren't already subscribed, what have you been doing? Seriously though, we have two ways that you can subscribe, either via email through our website at smieconsulting.org/subscribe. Enter your details there and you'll get it delivered into your email inbox on Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. If you prefer LinkedIn to get your international ed news, we have that option available as well. I'll be dropping the links to this week's edition of the newsletter as email version and LinkedIn version, as well as the SMIE Consulting website in the chat. So please do subscribe if you aren't already. Between those two versions, the email and the LinkedIn version, we now have over 2,400 international educators that are receiving the newsletter in their inboxes each week. So grateful that we could be a part of your international edification each week. So what we do in that newsletter, we feature stories on how social media, AI, other digital and social media tools are used in international education and how they might be applied to what you do on campus. We also look at some of the big picture news stories in the United States related to international education, then talk about some solutions, and then wrap up with a global roundup of news stories from other parts of the world so that we can keep our eye on what's going on in the rest of the international ed global student mobility world that we live in that is increasingly smaller. The pie's still getting bigger, but we're so increasingly connected. So in that newsletter, you have all those content, and we take a look on Wednesdays at three common themes we see developing in some of the news stories that week, and then we kind of go in more depth. We give you our hot takes on those issues on news stories on Monday, and then on Wednesday we pick three of those key themes and then go next level with our interpretation of what these stories might mean for what we do in international ed here in the U.S. And I appreciate those of you who are watching live on LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as Facebook. We also have this on demand on all of those platforms in video formats, as well as an audio-only podcast version that now has over 4,200 downloads, over 300. This is our 307th episode. So I've been doing this for over almost 6 years now. So very excited to be coming to you each week, providing a look at our next level thoughts on what these questions mean for what we do in international education. So let's get right into our first question. And that is your major pain point with students, prospective students, poor communication? And for most of us in the field, if you've been in international recruitment and international missions for any period of time, one of the hardest things to do is have ComFlow messaging that's tailored to international students. Every institution has their own flow for domestic students and may even have segmentation by state and maybe by major, and that some of that can be adjusted to meet the needs of international students. But there are a whole range of issues and values that international students want to know about your institution that may not be part of that normal ComFlow. Things like what are current international students doing on campus? Where are they from? What are their outcomes? What is health insurance like? What are some of the ways we can connect with you since we're not going to be able to visit campus before orientation begins for new students? How can you help me find out things about your campus that I would not normally be able to find out online? So this is the kind of content, making that connection with current students, with recent alumni in their field, professors, all of the types of things that you can and really want to do ideally in a communication flow is oftentimes the biggest stumbling block. Developing that content and plugging it into an existing system, having a separate flow just for internationals that supplements what might be some of the more general messages that students will get anyway. So these are the kinds of things that really can bog down a process for international students. How are you responding to initial inquiries? I'm about to go on my first trip for the University of Akron at the end of the month, going to Vietnam, and we've got 3 student fairs and an agent fair that I'll be doing. And having the right materials to take obviously is an important piece for the students I'll be meeting in person. Having a way for those students to sign up and to receive more, and for me to be able to continue a conversation after the event. That's all stuff I need to make sure I've got taken care of now before I go. And part of that back end process is setting up what that initial message is going to be after they register on the platform, or register using the QR code that will take them to an event specific landing page for the fairs that I'll be attending. And then that immediate response to them will come within a couple hours of that information, them completing that form. And then that will be a personalized message from me talking to them about thanking them for being a part of the process, letting them know that they can be back in touch with me if they have questions along the way, and then entering them into our regular communication flow, which isn't perfect yet. I'm just started there. We don't have a separate international comm flow yet, but that's something we're going to be developing. So the articles that I'm referencing today, well, first is an ICEF Monitor one that's entitled How to Improve Your Communication with Prospective International Students. And it talks about the interconnections. And this is really important because not every student takes in information the same way. Some will see it in a brochure and love it. Some will have to go onto a website. Some prefer to see it on social. Some only want to have chats with individual students. Some will want to do their own secret shopping through YouTube channels and other video content. So how do you have all of that together? And it's an interconnectedness of messaging that has similar messaging across various platforms, through institutional websites, through CRM responses, email, social media, in communication with prospective students. The ICEF Monitor article identifies 3 key areas that matter most when it comes to communications with prospective international students: speed, friendliness, and follow-ups. And that's always where the rubber hits the road, where either things go well and you make progress and you develop relationships and there's consistency of messaging and contact, or you forget. Or if it's not automated, it doesn't happen. If there's not regular ways that your content is getting in front of these students, these are missed opportunities and lead to disconnects eventually happening between you and the students you're trying to recruit. So really what the article will kind of finish with is, at the heart of any good student recruitment strategy, quote unquote, is knowing how to reduce the potential for prospects to become frustrated, absolutely, and 2, lower the rate at which students drop out of the enrollment funnel. Obviously, we want to increase our yield. We want to progress more students through the funnel, from inquiry to applicant to admitted student to confirmed to enrolled. So all of those steps have students that fall away for various reasons. They don't get admitted. They get a better offer from another institution. They get an I-20 from another institution before they get one from yours. All of these things can impact where a student chooses to go. So this ICEF Monitor article is definitely worth a read. I'll follow that up with one particular article from our colleagues at INTED, Finding and Alleviating Admissions Pain Points. And this is something that this is their international education marketing company. They are recruitment consultants helping institutions kind of develop plans through strategic planning, market research, all of the different things, and actual implementation strategies. So very well respected in the field, and have a growing list of quality institutions that they're working with. These are the kinds of, they make reference to some of those things: a communication coordinator for admissions as a common thought that they hear from clients. They have a communication coordinator for admissions and they don't know how to use him or her internationally. So it's all about identifying pain points, this article that they mentioned, but they do talk about the comm strategies, how important that is and making sure everybody who's involved in the process of those points of communication with international students, from the recruiters to the admission staff that read the applications, to students that might be working with prospective internationals, to any faculty or other staff that might be communicating at different points throughout the recruitment cycle. All of those folks need to be on the same page as to what that level of interaction should be and can be if everybody's on the same page. So really positive articles from ISAF Monitor and in TED on that. So definitely take a look at those as you have a look at your own comm strategies with international students. So and identifying where the gaps are and how you can best fill them. So moving on to our second question of the day, and that is, what does a healthy agent relationship look like? Now, this is one of those things that when I first started my international admissions career back in 1993, educational agents weren't a thing yet in the U.S. It was all do-it-yourself. It was you send mail materials to international schools abroad. You might do the odd fair or tour through one of the organizations like CIS, ECIS at the time, and to do Linden tours that are much more expensive tours and other AEO tours, those kind of things. Those were kind of new and up and coming, but you were kind of on your own to figure it out. There weren't the volume of service providers at various levels to help institutions kind of make international admissions happen. When I started, the internet was just in its infancy, and we barely had a website when I first started. We were using email, but really not well. Most of the rest of the world, we weren't realizing, and the capacity and internet access and all of these things weren't readily available outside the U.S. In all places that we would be recruiting. So it was still very much mailings and physically going places. But that world is gone. And in the noughties, certainly post 9/11, we saw a huge explosion in the number of service providers, educational agents, tour providers. Ed tech was just becoming a thing then in the noughties. And you saw a lot more variety in terms of how you could be recruiting international students, and agencies in the noughties started to get on the radar of a lot of institutions. I remember working at Education USA in 2008-9, and there was a big debate brewing about whether or not working with educational agents was legal, or certainly ethical, let alone legal. Certainly, financial aid regulations in the United States banned commission-based payments to individuals for recruitment of domestic students. There are were also bans on institutional staff having their pay based on how many students they enrolled. So commission-based payments based on that. So the third-party agents really became a way, particularly community colleges, but some entrepreneurial state institutions in the noughties started using them. And probably, I think by 2013, when there was actually hearings held on whether, through NACAC's principle of ethical practices, there was a phrase in there that seemed to indicate working with agents was not ethical and that it should be banned amongst NACAC members. And then these hearings were held, very interdepartmental, governmental, NGO world panels were held. Education USA was a part of that, which at the time did not allow their advisors to work with agents directly. The hearings were basically concluded that, well, agents really aren't illegal. It isn't unethical if it's managed correctly. And that's really the rub of this question: what does a healthy agent relationship look like? Because when it comes right down to it, there are so many educational agents out there, and if you're already subscribed to our newsletter, you certainly know that there are over 22,000 that ISAF had reported, 22,000 agencies, educational agencies worldwide. Obviously, no one wants to work with that many. That would be absolutely insane to manage. I've shared the story here before that one previous institution, when I first started, was replacing a director who'd been there 30 years. And she only ever worked with agents. She would go to ISEF and Alfie speed dating events around the world and sign up as every agent she met with, and basically had a letter, not even a contract, a letter that would say, here's how much we'll send to you if you send us a student. So it wasn't a contract, wasn't any general counsel vetting of this, and that went on for years, 3 decades. When I asked the question on the first day, how many agencies do we work with? Everybody kind of laughed, and I said, please send me the list. So they sent me an Excel spreadsheet that had over 2,500 names of agencies on there that she had accumulated over the last 30 years. And that obviously is an unmanageable number, and that 800 of those were just from India. And it really boggles the mind to think how hard that must have been on staff to manage those relationships. And I asked the question then, well, how many of those 2,500 have actually sent us students in the last 3 to 5 years? And that got it down to about 180 number of agencies. So we had that still is unsustainable. So we developed a series of trainings to educate our agencies on policy changes, on shifts, on process, on visas, on scholarships, all of that. Set of videos that they would have to watch, and then a test that they would have to take at the end to confirm that they actually did watch the videos. We could track that, and then we got that number down to about 60. 60 that we then would initiate contracts with. So that process took about 4 months to complete from the time I started to the time we got at least a process set up to vet agents that we were going to work with, train agents we were going to work with. And that's half the battle, frankly, is getting the commitments to them to attend training, to sign their contracts, to agree on whatever pricing that you're using. But that just starts the relationship. That gets it off on the right foot. The managing of relationships with educational agents is one that takes time, it takes effort, and it requires a mindset approach, frankly, that is different than what maybe exists on a lot of campuses. To truly be successful, the relationships that you develop with your agency partners need to be beyond transactional. Because if that's all they are, here's 5 students that we enrolled, here's your check for $15,000 or whatever it is that you're paying commission on. So for us, and what I've learned by trial and error over the years in working with educational agents, that you have to develop a personal connection with those people. Part of that will mean meeting with them in person, visiting them when they come to the U.S. for conferences like AIRC or NAFSA or others like that, or ISEF meetings, making the effort to connect with them in person, because nothing's more significant in helping a relationship sustain itself than regular contact in person, face to face. And if you can't do that with everybody, and that's understandable, some of the agents don't travel, they don't have the budget to do that. If you are traveling abroad, you need to make efforts when you're in country to visit your agent partners, because that just helps them better connect with you, for them to feel that they're valued. And we can't ignore that as a part of the equation here. We need to feel that that agency has our best interests in heart, and the agency needs to know that we care enough about them to make sure that they're equipped with the right information, that they know who they can deal with whenever they have a problem. And that part of that responsibility falls back on us to respond and to solve the problems if they do happen. Whether it's a billing question, whether it's they're not on, their agency name isn't on the application, or they change their name, making those changes in a timely manner so that they feel they're being listened to, that they're being heard. All of that is relationship gold if you're able to manage that well. And part of an article that came out in the Pi News, they've had a series of these on like secret agents. And basically an agent that's interviewed, kept their identity kept anonymous. They've done this with universities in the UK. So this is, I think, the second one of the agent ones that they've done. So this agency representative talks about their role of talking about the contracts, talking how universities treat them, and as suppliers of students or marketing services, whatever it might be. And, and it's oftentimes at an institutional level, when you're developing these relationships, there has to be a point, right? A one point person. But the agencies want to feel that they're heard beyond just your office, the international office, because they're going to deal with the billing office, the bursar's office, the accounts office, whatever office handles payments. They're going to deal potentially with the admissions office on the front end, or the International Student Scholar Service if they have issues with any of their students that they need to be kept in the loop on, or if they have had the students sign off on, yes, please keep them aware of what I'm doing. All of that matters. And I think for most of us in international ed in the US is we how we view our relationships with our agent partners needs to be the same as how we view our relationships with other service providers, other colleagues in the field. That when I go to NAFSA, when I go to AIRC, when I go to major events, Education USA forums, I maintain those relationships I've developed already because they matter to me as a person, as a professional, that I've invested time in them in the past. I want to keep that relationship going, whether it's having coffee, going out for beer after an event, meeting for a cocktail, whatever it might be. Having those opportunities to maintain those relationships. And not everybody's going to be a best friend. Obviously, that's not possible and not feasible, and you need to be practical about these things. But for us as international educators, our eventual success is going to be defined by the strength of our relationships. And with our agent partners especially, it's taking the time to listen to them. It's taking the time to be responsive, to recognize them for who they are. Many of my colleagues on LinkedIn will be posting out about national holidays in some of their major markets, or religious festivals, whether it be Diwali for our Hindi community in India, or Lunar New Year for our East Asian family of agents or our partner universities, to other to those in Muslim majority countries that are practicing Muslims, that we celebrate Ramadan and all the various celebrations around that. So it's taking the time to appreciate them for who they are, and ways that you can easily just show that you care. Many of us will send holiday cards or Christmas cards out from our offices to our partners. Some of our partners will send us gifts, small chocolates or flowers or whatever, to the office, and that's great. It shows mutual respect, mutual appreciation. So when we do that on a regular basis, that's a healthy relationship. This isn't rocket science. It's kind of relationship 101, but it's what things that we do in our personal lives in terms of relationships we have with friends, family, all those things. There are commonalities in terms of how we model what we see as a successful relationship with a family member or a dear friend, and how we work in the business world with our professional relationships, and how we can keep those healthy and keep those sustained and strong and mutually beneficial. And ultimately, that's the end result. What can we be doing better together? And institutions and agencies that approach that relationship that way, and never just settle, and they'll do reviews every once in a while, see how that relationship is going. Is it, are there tweaks we can make to how we've been doing things process-wise that would be helpful? Are there things that on the agency side that they could be doing to better communicate with us the interests of their students and keeping us in the loop, so we're not chasing students that clearly aren't interested anymore after a couple of months, helping us navigate the relationships we're trying to build beyond them to the students we're trying to enroll. So those are some of the key thoughts I have on the relationship issue with agents, and it's a very good read from the PI on the secret agent, kind of sharing their perspective there. Now let's shift gears to kind of a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a while. It's a very useful one, I think, because when it comes to the global landscape of international student mobility, We've talked at length here on how the U.S. is far and away the #1 destination, always has, more than likely always will be, just because of capacity more than anything else. No other country that has developed a higher ed system that is attractive to international students has the capacity in space, in facilities, in infrastructure to support huge numbers of international students. We're at 5 or 6% max right now of our total higher ed population. Canada, UK, Australia, they're at 25-30% or more. So they can't really grow anymore. They've had government restrictions put in place to get that number under control because of the impact it's having on infrastructure and other services in their countries. So there may be 20, 30 years down the road, a well-developed higher ed infrastructure to support more students, and that would be in India. China perhaps as well, politically, if that ever resolves itself to make it a much more open country. But we see with India, particularly in the last few years, their national education policy in 2020 kind of got short shrift with COVID, but the implementation of a lot of those ideas in terms of making India more of a destination for international students, not just an exporter of Indian students abroad for study. You see a lot more opportunities being created in India for higher education. The reason why one of the many reasons, and so many Indian students go abroad is lack of quality higher ed opportunities in India. Though there are 6,000, 8,000, 10,000 plus colleges and or universities in the country, 60 to 70% now of the country's higher ed infrastructure is private. There's just been huge explosions in that in terms of the enrollments of students with varying degrees of quality. And that's one thing when universities in the US or other countries are trying to establish relationships in India, it's a very difficult one to navigate because you don't know necessarily whose quality and the sites that rate them, and the NERF ratings, the NAAC ratings, those websites are oftentimes not accessible or down. So there's some real challenges in navigating that process. But you see with the NEP, with new policies in terms of overseas institutions that want to set up campuses in the United States, they can do so if they have a top 200 ranking. If they have a program ranking in the top 100 in the world, they can do that. And if you're at a university that has that kind of a program, there are things you should be doing now to explore TNE in India. And what is TNE? Transnational education. There are some examples we've been sharing in the newsletter the last couple of weeks on British institutions, Australian universities that have set up shop or in the process of setting up shop in different places in India. Some are in Gurgaon outside New Delhi. Some are setting up in GIFT, which is in Gujarat, a particular trade-free zone that is actually exempt from the NEP requirements. That institutions that set up there be top 200 in the world or top 100 in a particular discipline. Those restrictions and having areas that other institutions can find a home there are ones that you should be exploring because the market there is immense and is only getting bigger. It's a young population that are looking for opportunities, and if they can do your degree in India, or a portion of their degree in India, first 2 years, and then transfer to you, or a 3+1 or 3+2, where it's your curriculum being offered in country through online, through in-person locations where you hire local faculty to teach your classes, all of those. A lot of obviously accreditation I's and T's that need to be dotted for anything like that to be even considered. Union rules on certain campuses are coming into play. But the opportunities that Indian institutions are looking for partners to do like a campus within a campus opportunity in India, and potentially have a reverse campus within the campus on your campus. A lot of these brands that are particularly private brands that are beyond just India, Amity, you see Tedder and a couple others that have popped onto the radar recently. Amity's been there for years, but they have global locations. some of those global locations might be primed to take, and you or a particular program you're trying to grow and deliver it in country. That's something I think we should be considering. And having a piece of that pie where it can be they do their degree there, bachelor's degree there in India through your program perhaps, and then they've got your degree already. They can transfer to the U.S. to do a master's degree or eventually a PhD. These are the kind of things that you're increasing the opportunities, not just the traditional bring them here and have them enroll. Everybody wants that in an ideal world, the more the merrier, up to capacity, but the realities are we can't always build that level of growth for straight enrollments as easily as we can by diversifying how we operate around the world, and I think beyond our own borders. We do online education across the United States. Some institutions have had Purdue Global, ASU Global, University of Arizona Global, a lot of UMBC, or University of Maryland Global Campus. A lot of these major flagship state institutions will have these global programs that will offer their degrees online anywhere. There are some checks and balances you need to have in there to make sure that the degrees that are being offered in certain countries are actually recognized in country. Are online degrees recognized universally everywhere? No, they're not. So you have to be aware of these things. But having the ability to think beyond the traditional models of bringing students to your campus for enrollment purposes, India is doing that by looking at these ways that they can set up these third-party these overseas institutions setting up shop there. They're looking at ways that some of their institutions, like Amity and the private ones, are setting up campuses in other countries. They're thinking like that. They're being entrepreneurial. They're learning from what the Aussies and the British have been doing there for years in terms of building ways for different models and pipelines for students to receive university degrees. So TNA India, it's a perfect storm right now, and I think this is an opportunity for everybody who's serious about expanding the range of options and pathways for students to get your degree, whether it's all in India or all in another country or half and half, whatever it might look like. Looking at beyond just the physical students on your campus as a way to generate revenue, as a way to expand your influence as an institution and the degrees that you're able to offer to a wider range of students, and not just those that can physically afford it to come here for 2 to 3 years or 4 years for degrees. So that's all we have for you this week on the Roundup. I want to thank everybody for joining in live. Appreciate the comments, and certainly we'll be looking forward to chatting with you